Welcome back to Forward Progress, presented by Fanduel. We are back, and we're going to be taking a look at the NFC West. We're going to be doing a little division preview here. Your host, Jason Cooper, alongside Judah Fortgang. And let's get right into things. The NFC West on Forward Progress is kind of being dubbed as the division of sleepers. Rob has the 49ers as one of his sleepers next year. Seahawks are my sleepers. Some of you commenters have the Cardinals. If we take a look at the odds right now on Fanduel, right now, it's pretty tight two-horse race for first between San Fran and the Rams, with the 49ers being plus 150 and the Rams being listed plus 185 to win their division. Then there's kind of a steep cliff, and then there's the Cardinals and the Seahawks. I mean, a lot of moving parts here, but I want to start with the Rams, the team that was 10-7 last year, the team that led the division. It's a two-horse race for first, according to the odds makers, Judah. And my question to you is, let's start with the Rams. I mean, it was tough for them to improve on their team last year. They did that, though. They swapped out Cooper Kupp. They brought in Devontae Adams. Talked a little bit about that previously in this offseason. Their defense is kind of like a young nucleus and should improve just by virtue of being 1 year older. They have Jared Verse, like Fisk, Turner, added Poona Ford. Good defensive line there. Again, like I said, two-horse race to win their division. I don't want you to tell me why you think they're going to win their division or their path to winning. I want you to play devil's advocate here because I like the Rams to win this division. So if the Rams don't win this division, what goes wrong? What happens here? Give me that kind of devil's advocate point of view on the Rams.
Yeah, I've got a couple answers. I think the most obvious one is that Matthew Stafford's old and has not really been healthy for, it's the duration of his career, but he's really even started to miss games in each of the last few seasons. But I really hate that answer of just injury, though I do think this is kind of more likely than a typical case. They're very, very kind of dependent, I think, on Puka Nacua. Yes, I think Devontae Adams is an upgrade over Cooper Kupp, but that's because Kupp was generating absolutely zero at the end of the last season. But this is a team that is throwing to him on first reads at by far the highest rate in the NFL. And he's also the type of player who puts himself in positions where he's going to take a ton of hits, right? A lot of his value comes at the catch point in tight spaces. He's going to be more at risk for injury than another player. And they are reliant on production from him. If he takes a step back or if he gets hurt, I think that's going to go a long way. But even you mentioned the defense, and Jared Verts looks like he's going to be an absolutely terrific player. But it's easy to kind of be stuck in a view of all the data we have right now on him is awesome. And the Rams defense completely transformed when they started playing him as a full-time player. And I'm with you. I think this should be a solid unit, but let's not remember, we still don't have a huge sample. They're still banking on some more kind of production from him getting better, which obviously can happen, but that's no guarantee. And I think the production that we're banking on from the pass rush that they had last year, a bunch of young guys, and there's no guarantee that that's going to repeat itself. So I think you add it all up, it's they are still a top-heavy team, right? The Rams made a name for themselves over the last bunch of years as being a top-heavy team, and that's still true. So a couple of guys get hurt. They're just not so deep, and they're still reliant on certain players' productions, which is a blessing and a curse. If those guys are healthy and producing, they're going to be good. If they're not, I think this is a division that they might not win.
Yeah, and I think I really like what you said there about the defense in particular. Obviously, I mentioned that they should, in virtue, improve, right? Being 1 year older, but progression isn't linear. That's my favorite saying in all of sports, right? Just because a guy's 1 year older doesn't mean he gets 1 year better. He could flatline, could get worse. That stuff happens in sports, and that's why we love it. So yeah, I like that case that you made there for maybe what could go wrong for the Rams. I wanted you to make that case because I've been hearing a lot about what's going to go right for the Rams. So let's play devil's advocate. That was fun to do. Let's move on to the next two teams I want to discuss. And I mentioned it off the top in this video. Two sleepers from this division in our sleeper video that we released last week on the channel. You can go check that out on our channel here. The two teams I had the Seahawks. Rob liked the 49ers as a sleeper. Listen, comment down below if you think the 49ers as a sleeper is a cop-out, because I think it is. Anyways, besides the point. But I want to go in depth on some of their offseason moves, because for me, there was a little bit of mirroring going on with these two teams. And I want to look at the Seahawks and how they moved on from Ryan Grubb, hired Clint Kubiak as their new OC. I want to look at the 49ers, how they moved on from Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn got a coaching job, and they hired Robert Saleh as their new defensive coordinators. Both these units got new coordinators, And on top of that, we've seen large changes for both of those units in terms of veteran players who've kind of been the nucleus and the staple of the Seahawks offense and the 49ers defense. Those guys are on their way out, and they have a new influx of players coming in. So kind of two-part question here. Who do you think is going to be the more beneficial hire here for the Seahawks and the 49ers? Is it Robert Saleh for the 49ers? Is it Clint Kubiak helping out that offense for the Seahawks? And then also, how do you think both these teams will handle the turnover of their roster with these given units?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the answer to the first question. I think Clint Kubiak almost has a lot tougher of a job. And I guess in some way this actually answers both, which is that, like, yes, the Niners have lost some key guys, but they still have Nick Bosa. They still have Fred Warner. And, like, these are the kind of key cogs, at least at the first two levels. But the reason I answer Kubiak is because I think you look at the job he did in New Orleans last season, which I certainly was riding the train very early in the season. And then injuries, in addition to some poor performance, really derailed it. But, like, he was making a lot, in particular on the offensive line, out of guys who had no real production. Like Lucas Patrick just becoming a terrific guard. Cesar Ruiz has been bad for most of his career and was just really good last year. And those guys all ended up getting hurt. But schematically, what he was able to do on the offensive line really helped generate a lot of offense for the Saints. And I think that, like, the Seahawks are going to need very similar kind of, work, I guess, from Kubiak, given that, like, they basically have 4 weak links on the offensive line. Charles Cross has been he emerged really last season as a good left tackle, but the rest of the guys have just been bad. And not just that, this is not a situation where the offensive line matters less because the quarterback can kind of create in the zone and evade pressure. Like, Sam Darnold is maybe the single most dependent quarterback on his offensive line doing his job, right? We certainly saw that on national TV and week 18 against the Lions and the wild card week, but this is also, bears out in the data. This is a guy who needs his offensive line to protect. He has the widest gap in what I call disruption EPA, which is when things are kept clean. He was an awesome quarterback last season for the Vikings. When things got messy, he was among the worst in the NFL. And Kubiak's going to need to take what is a really, really weak personnel group, not just on the O-line, but I think that's where he even had some flashes of success in turning some guys who do not project well into some good players. But this wide receiving room, I was talking about how I think Cooper Kupp's fallen off a lot. Marquez Valdez-Scantling should not be your starting outside receiver if you're going to be a really productive offense. So I guess, maybe not so high on your sleeper Seahawks, at least on the offensive side of the ball. But if Kubiak can work some magic and kind of capture a bit of what he had early in last season with the Saints, I think that can, make a big difference. And then I guess I'm rambling on here, but
go away, fire away.
On the defensive side, I think Saleh is. I mean, he's led great defenses, and it's hard to kind of pinpoint, but, like, I think there are a multitude of factors in the Jets' defensive decline last season. It does coincide with Robert Saleh leaving. I don't think that's necessarily all just a schematic thing. There are a lot of factors there, but, like, he's led great defenses wherever he's been, and I think just having still some anchors in Warner and Bosa. Yes, you lost Travarius Ward. You lost a bunch of other kind of key contributors. You still got 2 anchor players, and I think Saleh can do a good job. And if the Niners offense can return, I don't know if it's going to matter anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. And like you said, a lot is going to be put on this Niners offense, but I think they only had like almost, I forget, I wish I had the number in front of me. They played very few games as a cohesive unit with Ayuk, with Juwan Jennings, with Brock Purdy, and with Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle on the field as one unit. You can throw in Ricky Pearsall in there as well, but they really lack that continuity on offense. So we'll really rely heavily on those guys for the 49ers to succeed. And just touching on the 49ers defense, like you mentioned there, they're going to need a lot from their rookies, from this rookie class. Drafting Michael Williams, drafting Alfred Collins, like, they're probably going to have to rely on those guys in the trenches for their defensive line, because their defensive line depth is really a question mark. And that's why I kind of like the move that they made with Robert Saleh here, because I think I doubted Robert Saleh as a head coach, but I don't doubt him as a defensive coordinator at all. I think he can elevate a group of men and lead them and lead them to be a good defensive group, as we've seen many times before. Before we get into the next part of the video, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors over at Fanduel. It might be the offseason, but if you want to bet on the NFL and NFL futures, Fanduel is the place to go for that action. If you want to bet on awards markets, who's going to win the Super Bowl, to win each division, heck, win totals that you can parlay together, and so much more, you can do it over on Fanduel. Just visit fanduel.com/forward progress, now America's #1 sportsbook. That's fanduel.com/forward progress. Let's get to the last team in the division, the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, this is like, I feel like I say this every year. It's year 1, it's year 2, it's year 3 of Jonathan Gannon. We haven't seen the growth. We haven't seen the progression. I guess we have like a little bit, like two extra wins year over year. Like, that's not really much here. They need to be a playoff team at this point in their development, or like, what's the point? Let's move on from Gannon and let's figure out a new direction for maybe these Cardinals. So, I mean, this is their year. What has to go right for the Cardinals for them to break out of the NFC West basement? Give me the path for them to finish top 2 in this division, or maybe they're third in the division and they make the playoffs. What's the path for them? What needs to go right for them?
Yeah, I think it's Kyler Murray rediscovering his deep ball. This is a guy who his first 3 years in the league is one of the best deep passers in terms of just like total EPA. He added on deep passes. 2019, almost 60 points. 2020, 43. 2021, 64. The last season was 8. And then in 2023 and 2022 it was -20 and -11. So he has regressed pretty majorly in that category. Now, again, this coincides with DeAndre Hopkins coming, and then DeAndre Hopkins leaving. A lot of those numbers are kind of dependent on that. It doesn't map exactly, but and we know that deep play in particular is very much driven not only by the quarterback, but also by the wide receiver. And I think a lot of that comes down to Marvin Harrison. And this is a guy who was used a lot on vertical routes last season, go routes, and did not separate and did not win deep. And I think that they're really banking on him to take that next step and become that kind of DeAndre Hopkins type figure, because the rest of Kyler Murray's game was at its best. His sack avoidance was as good as it's ever been. His ability to his accuracy is up, and even just winning in kind of the non-deep areas of the field, he was great. It was just he was not capturing that sort of deep production. And a lot of that is just like they were scheming a ton of routes to Marvin Harrison, and he was not able to produce. So what goes right is like they rediscover that element of the offense. And I think that's going to go a long way, because let's not forget that there was a point in time before Kyler Murray's ACL injury, I believe it was 2022, like halfway through the season, Kyler Murray was the odds-on favorite to win MVP. Right, that production or that ability is still there. And I think what's kind of been missing is this element of a deep passing game. And it's wide receiver dependent. They need Marvin Harrison to be the guy they drafted. And that's what I think can elevate this team to being the offense that we saw in the kind of earlier Kyler Murray years.
Okay, this might be like a little bit too deep in the weeds question here, but I want to touch on like Marvin Harrison, because we talked about him in a previous video. If you want to go check out our 6 sleeper players, I have him as 6 breakout candidates. I have Marvin Harrison as one of my breakout candidates in 2025. Are you skeptical about Drew Petzing and the way he's running this offense in terms of like his utilization of Marvin Harrison? Because it feels like you mentioned, he wasn't doing well separating on those deep balls. And do you feel like that he has to do that, or do you think a better solution is to like minimize the amount of deep balls he gets and kind of have him more on these in or out breaking routes?
Yeah, it's tough. I think the main thing is what I do like that they did, at least as an offense in general. When you have a wide receiver who you think can be elite, is Marvin Harrison was third in the NFL in like isolated targets, meaning when a quarterback is looking and like his first read is only to the side where there's one receiver, and that receiver is Marvin Harrison. So they're drawing up a ton of reads, and like that's almost often one of the best plays. Right, like you want your one-on-one, like your receiver, he's going to win. The play's designed for him. I don't think we have enough data and like enough on I think being able to say vertical, maybe this is a cop-out answer, I'm sorry. Being able to say vertical, out-breaking, in-breaking, like those routes and breaking it and classifying that way does have value, but without kind of the further context of classifying as like, okay, what are the other routes? What's the route combinations? What's the actual play design? I think we're missing a bit. Ultimately, what it comes down to, I think, is that like Harrison wasn't winning enough. And like you need your receivers if you're going to have right, they need him to be that explosive downfield player. You need him to win. And at some point, it's a matter of execution. I don't think it's passing. And yes, you adjust if he's not that guy. But I do think it was right, at least last year, to like give him the opportunity, give him those reps. And I would continue to do so early in this season. And then at a certain point, we're going to have to kind of readjust. So I guess I actually answer your question is no. I don't think there's a problem in the rep design. Granted that I don't know and don't have all the information. But this would be the year where if things continue on that trajectory, I would pivot, given my limited information set.
All right, I'm going to make sure that this year, whenever Arizona's playing in prime time, we have you as one of the guests for the watch along, so I can re-ask this question 5, 6, 7 weeks down the road. All right, let's close it out here. Before we do, quickly, guys, comment below. Just give me your general thoughts on this division. I couldn't come up with a specific question, whether it's who you think is going to win, who you feel like is undervalued. If you think any of these guys are your favorites to win the Super Bowl or win the conference, let us know in the comment section down below. We always love to hear your comments and chatter because we always go back and forth. I've been responding to a bunch of comments over the past couple weeks. A lot of fun for me to do. So great way to spend my time. Great way to spend your time. Let's have some conversations in the chat down below. Judah, last question here. Which team do you think has the widest range of outcomes of all the teams in this division? I'm talking upside and downside. Who has that widest range? And is there a way that you would think about attacking them? You don't have to answer that part in markets, but just let me know the widest range of outcomes for these teams.
Yeah, I think it's the Rams. I think this kind of shapes up. I would not be shocked if this is 2022, where just like things kind of go off the rails. They don't have much production outside of one receiver. And the defense kind of is not as good as everyone anticipated. I see them as a possible, like they can win, like in that scenario, like they start benching or resting Stafford or whatever it might be, and they realize their window's closing, and you kind of have that season. Say they start 2-5 or whatever. I can also just see like, no, this has been a terrific offense with all their guys healthy. The young defensive players take the next step. Jared Verse kind of makes that leap from like great player to the next elite edge player, in the same conversation as Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, those guys, and this team wins the division with ease. I think the other teams are kind of like we know what we're mostly going to get. Maybe it's the Seahawks. I don't know. I guess I don't see the famous last words. I don't really see how the offense becomes a juggernaut, but the defense should be good.
Yeah, fair enough. I clipped that and I'm storing that in my drafts on Twitter just for midseason. All right, before we head out, gun to your head, I want you to give me the exact finishing order of this division. Gut check, whatever you feel.
Niners, Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks.
Niners, Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks. If you agree with Judah, plus 850 over on Fanduel right now. You can go bet that. They have tons of exact finishing orders on Fanduel if you want to check that out. But that does it for us here today. If you like the content, do us a favor, smash that like button. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We got tons of more division previews coming your way. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.